Hey everyone, welcome back to the American Justice Podcast Q&A edition for episode 4. We hope everyone's having a good week, staying safe, staying home. Although it would appear over here in Texas, we're going to open up on Friday. Like, we're opening up at what, 25% capacity? So isn't that what you've heard, Scott?
You know, I've been trying not to listen to the news too much, so but I'll trust you on that.
Yeah, the governor yesterday said that we're going to open everything up to 25% capacity starting on Friday, and depending on how well that works, they're going to open it to 50%, 75, so on, so forth, all the way back to what we would consider normal. So that's bars, movie theaters, all stores, pretty much everything, I think. So I'm still not going.
Right? Do we know? Do we know what the time frame is between each level? Because we won't know the resurgence until at least a month or two later. But what's their time frame? Do you know?
Yeah, I didn't listen to him that carefully.
Well, that's probably good for your sanity. But yeah, as long as to me, it's like, I don't really have a big problem with, and I've said this on my Facebook page, I don't really have a big problem with people getting back out in public, as long as they do the things that they're supposed to do, the social distancing, the wearing the mask, stuff like that. So I don't have a big problem with it. And, but what I don't want is, I don't want people to have like this false sense of security that everything's fine and they can just go out and I went out the other day to the store to get some groceries, and it just amazed me. I mean, how busy it was on Saturday, and it was like busy like nothing ever happened, and hardly anybody was wearing, well, I will say that there were a lot of people that weren't wearing masks. A majority were, which was good, but it's as long as people don't get lulled into that false sense of security, we are not out of the pandemic, and we won't be out of this pandemic until there's actual vaccine. So once we have the vaccine and we can distribute that widely, then we can get back to what we would consider normal. But until then, we need to wear the masks and kind of stay socially apart.
Yeah, well, society's not going to do that. We're thanks to social media and the internet, we're a society that's a bunch of extremists.
Yeah.
And we're all going to run right back out like nothing ever happened. And the second wave of the Spanish flu in 1917, the second wave killed way more than the first wave did. So, and they say history repeats itself. You're supposed to pay attention to that stuff. But
well,
I'm gonna do what I've been doing for the last month. Just taking care of me and mine, and not worry about what the rest of the world's doing.
It's kind of it is a good comparison, but it's also kind of a outdated comparison. We didn't have a clear understanding of viruses and how they worked back then. We didn't have things like masks. We didn't have things like sanitizer that we could use. So that's why I was saying that I don't really have a huge problem with, kind of opening things back up on a trial basis. But people have to learn and have to realize that you still have to do those things that we're supposed to be doing when we go out in public, the masks and the sanitizing and the social distancing, stuff like that. So, I
didn't think about that. I didn't think about, the things that they didn't have 100 years ago.
Yeah.
To kind of prevent things, like hand sanitizers, masks, stuff like that. So, well, I know when I was in the military, I guess back in 1998, many moons ago, right about the time when anthrax became a really big scare, they started inoculating us with anthrax vaccines. Immediately. Mm-hmm. And they hadn't been tested, and they were mandatory too. You would go to jail if you refused the anthrax vaccine in the Army back in the late 90s. and there were people that were having all kinds of side effects. I remember there were reports of soldiers completely going blind. I
Oh
mean,
my
there were
gosh.
just so much, and I want to say I know I received, I think it was like a 3 or 4 part inoculation, and I remember receiving every single part of it, and it was scary, is what it was. So take your time with this, please. Do some testing. Take your time. We don't want people to get a shot. They walk outside, the sunlight hits them, and they just
They
explode. We
explode.
don't want that. We don't
As,
want that.
as,
I just noticed.
as entertaining as it would be,
Yeah.
as entertaining it was
I
as it would be, we don't want that, right?
no. We don't want that. I just noticed that I can see the top of my shirt on the camera, and it just says "kiss me," but it really says "kiss me." I'm Irish. My friend brought that back to me from Aspen. So yes, if anyone was wondering what the rest of my shirt said, and no, I'm not. Look into my eyes; they're not dilated.
I thought you were just like
I'm
going
not.
around begging people to kiss you. I didn't know what.
God no. Yeah, I'm
Not
ballsy,
now.
Scott. In 2020, I'm just walking up to random strangers and asking them to kiss me.
Well, especially
Oh
not during,
God.
especially not during the pandemic, but
Let's jump straight to some questions here. Let's
sounds
see.
good.
Good old Debbie from Plano. Actually, we have 2 questions from good old Debbie in Plano. We can't have an episode without Debbie jumping in, can we?
No, absolutely not.
Let's see.
She's got a lot of good questions.
Okay. Her first question: why didn't the judge allow for a continuance until the missing phone records could be provided by the prosecution? The prosecution should have had to explain why the records were missing at the very least. There's already so much doubt in this case, it's astonishing that any jury could have agreed on a guilty verdict in good conscience.
Well, I would definitely agree with the last part of that statement. So, this would be a really good question for Judge Beacom to answer, and I really wish that he would respond with anything other than silence. you know, I
Right,
have
right.
for those of you that don't know, he has since retired from the bench, and I have reached out to him. I have asked him for comment. I've asked him to be interviewed for the documentary. And he just won't respond. I
Right.
mean, I'm sure that is the same as the rest of the prosecution team. I have yet to have anybody respond except for Ranger Collins. So that's the huge thing that I think he should answer. I don't have a huge understanding of kind of how all of that went down, but I do know that when they first found out that the records were missing, it was pretty far along in the process. As we talked about in the episode, it took a while for the defense to even get the records. And then once they got them, they had to go back and okay, then we got to set up time to go talk with Brandon. And then, Brandon's sitting there looking them over or whatever. And I think it took a while for them to realize, well, wait a second. Hold on. And I think if I remember correctly, it was when Brandon said that he knew or remembered making that call around 7:30 to his mom, and the phone call didn't show up on his records. So I think it was right around then he started realizing, well, wait a second, that phone call's missing. What about this other phone call? And and then they started going back and comparing other people's records with his and saying, wait a second, we know that he made a call, or that Morgan Lee made a call to him at 9:41 because it shows on her records, but we don't show anything on his record. You know what I mean? So it wasn't until then, and I'm not 100% sure when it was in the process. However, what I do know is that they did bring it up and they asked the prosecution, like, hey, where are these records? And then the prosecution went back and they took their time and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And the excuse that they came up with, and we'll cover this more when we get into the trial, and it'll be kind of like, hey, remember when we talked about those phone records missing? But it basically, they kind of tried to make an excuse that that it was a phone company issue, that the phone company didn't turn them over to them. But Debbie's question is exactly right. Well, wait a second. Why wasn't there a delay, or why wasn't there some kind of motion for a continuance so they could go back and figure it out? I can't answer that. Maybe we'd really have to get Jerry Spencer Davis on to answer, because Catherine Ferguson, I don't believe, was part of the legal team at that time. I'll reach out to her and see if she knows, but I'm not 100% sure why they didn't just have a continuance and say, hey, wait a second, we have to investigate this. I do know that from everything that I've heard, the defense accepted whatever excuse the prosecution gave them. So the prosecution basically told them that there was a mix-up with the phone company, and they didn't get the records from the phone company, and the defense seemed to have accepted that and not asked for their own investigation or anything like that. So maybe we can get Catherine on one week to answer that. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure. I actually don't even think that she was part of the case. She didn't come on until the constitutional violation. But it'd be really nice if we get Jerry Spencer Davis on here. He actually did respond when I asked him for an interview, and I believe the whole response consisted of one sentence that said, "I do not wish to partake in this case any further," or something like that, which was disappointing, because I would really like to talk to him. Even if it was off camera, I'd really like to talk to him about the case. But that's kind of what was going on. But we will get into it a lot more when we get into the trial, and when we start talking about what happened to these phone records and where were they and all that stuff. But the biggest point here, obviously, is that they didn't get turned over. And the one call that could prove Brandon's innocence just happens to be in that time frame.
Okay. All right. I actually I spent a lot of time working in Judge Beacom's court back during the time frame when all of this occurred, and I just remember him looking really bored. Like he was getting close to the end of his legal career.
Yeah.
And he would just, let me see if I can get this all in. This is how he would sit on the bench for the most part. Like, come on, bring it up.
Oh, jeez.
Whatever, guilty. Later, just he just, you could tell he was kind of over it, So,
yeah,
maybe that's it. I mean, nothing bad against the guy, but. I've had jobs like that before too, but my jobs didn't pretty much determine the fate and the well-being of other humans. So,
just a quick observation on my end. It seems like that there was a lot of things that happened in this case that it did seem like there was just kind of a rubber stamp on what the police were doing, especially. I don't think it's going to be next week, but the week after, we'll get into the arrest warrant. And when we explore what's in the arrest warrant, to even think that any judge on the face of the earth would sign off on this arrest warrant is just unfathomable. I mean, I can't even imagine being a judge and a police officer comes to me with this arrest warrant with no facts, no DNA, no eyewitness, nothing. How in the world did they sign off on that? So it does seem like there's a lot of just kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever, here's my signature. Probably didn't even read it type thing. Maybe we'll try. I never did reach out to Judge Leonard. I believe he was the one that signed it. Maybe we'll try to reach out to him and see what he was thinking.
Yeah, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. And that man was old, then.
Oh, so he's
might check the cemetery before you check the phone.
Oh, man. Well, maybe we can have a seance with a Ouija board or something.
Yes. Judge Leonard, if you can hear us.
What the hell were you thinking?
Right. I could just imagine him. Every time I imagine him signing that warrant, though, like you were a kid once, just like all of us. Did you ever see the animated Alice in Wonderland, the Disney?
Fun fact about Scott: I've never seen an animated Disney film.
Really?
Really?
Some of the older ones really really classic. Some of the newer ones, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But just the Mad Hatter, I'm sure you're aware that there is a character in literature known as the Mad Hatter.
I've heard the name.
And yeah, and just the voice actor that did his name, he did his voice just like this. And I can just imagine him sitting there looking over the arrest warrant going, "Oh, this looks interesting. I'll be more than happy to sign it."
Nice. I'll have to on the video part of the Q&A, I'll have to play a little clip of it.
Yeah, I think you should.
That's hilarious.
That's just silly.
We'll put
I
your
do
voice.
I do voices too.
We'll do.
I didn't know if you knew that. I do voices. It's not on my resume.
We'll put your voice over his animation and see what it shows. That's funny.
All right. I tell you what. I'm looking at my time.
Should we introduce it like, okay, here's that clip now?
Oh, this looks interesting. I'll be more than happy to sign it. All right, I'm looking at my timer here. Let's take a quick break for one of our sponsors, and we will be right back with the remaining questions.
Sounds good.
C. Derick Miller is an author, producer, and gonzo journalist from the conservative community of Greenville, Texas. Sam Cloud Miller is a graphic artist and a liberal civil rights activist from Austin, Texas. Combine those two, and what do you have? Magic. Recorded in the Bishop Arts District of Dallas, it's a podcast that is sure to never disappoint. They talk about books, film, music, today's topics, and life in general. Even though they may disagree on the topics from time to time, they'll always kiss and make up. It's a practice that America needs to relearn, don't you think? No filters, no scripts, and no schedule. Catch the Butterflies Make Me Angry podcast on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Peace to the peaceful, truth to the masses, hell to the tyrants. Get all the details at cderickmiller.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Q&A episode for episode 8. The Last Jedi.
The what?
The Last Jedi. That was episode 8 of Star Wars.
I don't know why, but I thought you said the Black Jedi.
The Black.
I was like,
no.
I was like, it's about Samuel Jackson?
Yeah, Sam Jackson. This whole episode is about him. No, it's
I was like, wow, I was like, that took a weird turn in the Star Wars saga.
Give Disney time, man. I think they're running out of ideas.
I know, like we'll have the Black Jedi, then we'll have the Jewish Jedi, and then we'll have the Mexican Jedi. I mean, how many different Jedis are we gonna have?
The Jedi.
The Judai. The Judeo-Jewi. Oh, God, okay. Anyways, I don't think that's this kind of podcast, but
No. It is not. I do a really good Brooklyn Jew impression, but I'll save you. I've spent a lot of time in Brooklyn in those little Jewish neighborhoods, and there's such great neighborhoods. But I spent enough time around them where I pretty much perfected the accent. Nice. We'll save it for another episode. I can't give away too much in this one. Okay. Debbie's other question.
I feel like if we do it in a different episode, it'll be out of context. So I feel like you kind of have to do it now.
Nope. Gonna make them wait. We're gonna make them wait. We're gonna leave them hanging. We're gonna right there on the edge. Then we gotta listen to next week. See, Derek's gonna do.
That's right.
Derek's gonna do his Brooklyn Jew accent.
Wait a second. Are you promising that you'll do it next
week?
week?
I promise I will do it next week. I
Nice.
promise I will do it next week. Also, my ex-father-in-law was Jewish, and even though he was like born and raised in Los Angeles, he still spoke like he was from Brooklyn. So,
oh yeah,
nice. I perfected at doing impressions of him. Never to his face, but okay.
He just would not get rid of. He's just not would not give up those Brooklyn Dodgers,
right.
Huh? Even though they went to LA.
I almost did the accent. You almost got me. Out of habit, I almost did it. You're not getting it until next week. Okay.
Next week. Tune in. You will see See Derick Miller do his Brooklyn Jew accent.
I hope that's not racist. That's not a racist thing, is it?
No,
Okay. I just wanted
we're
I just
not.
wanted to make sure. I didn't want to offend anyone.
No, we're just talking about generalities and stereotypes,
Right,
but it's
right.
fine.
Okay, sure. Okay. Debbie had sent another question. I guess this is the second part to her first question. Wow. It says, I have another question.
Uh oh.
If if Mike, Charla, and Ranger Doofus came on the show, what would be your first question for each of them after you were able to pick your jaw up off the floor, of course?
Well, that's a really good question. Thank you, Debbie. I think that I think the questions would be this. The question would be the same probably for Mike and Charla. I mean, I don't I feel like she asked the question in tongue in cheek, but I'll give a serious answer. Um, and then the question for Ranger Collins would be different. But Mike and Charla, my first question for them would be, you know, if you had nothing to do with this crime, why are you not supporting the effort to free Brandon? Because the fact that he is innocent, at least, you know, to us, because we've seen all the evidence, and hopefully to our viewers when we get done with the season, you know, the evidence that well, let me back up. The evidence that Brandon is completely innocent, I understand, is still being developed, and it's still something that we have to bring out in the podcast. However, the evidence that Brandon did not get a fair trial is absolutely, positively irrefutable. And so if that's the case, then why would you not support further the efforts that it's taking to at least get him a new trial? Even if they come back and say, okay, you know what, we don't know that Brandon's innocent, but we do believe that he didn't get a fair trial. So let's give him a new trial. Let's fix all the things that we fixed, or let's fix all the things that went wrong before, and let's try it again. And if they're so, you know, if the prosecution and the state is so confident in their evidence, let's do it again. Let's fix all the things that they did wrong, and let's do it again. I'm kind of getting off on a different tangent, talking about when I was just talking about, but that would be my question for them. If we can, you know, if all this stuff is true, why are you not more supportive of the efforts to get him out and to get a new trial? So that'd be the question I'd ask for them. For Ranger Collins, you know, there's just so many questions that I want to ask him. In fact, I actually got to the point of going back and forth with the Office of Media Affairs with the Texas Rangers. And I actually sent them a list of questions that I wanted to ask Ranger Collins. But to me, the biggest question I have for him would be, what convinced you that Brandon was being nefarious and was just straight up lying to you? Have you never, ever had someone that was a little off on their time and a little off on their story and them be completely innocent? I mean, as you know, as we said in the episode, there were other guys that were off on their time, but you never accused them of being liars. You never accused them of being cold-blooded killers. Like, what was it about Brandon, other than the fact that he was your only suspect at that point, made you feel like Brandon was lying to you?
Yeah, I get that, and you know, just reading and listening to these episodes and reading over these reports and everything, and I know it's conflicting from one report to the next whether or not the Texas Rangers closed down at 5 o'clock. So you know, maybe it was 5:02. You know, he didn't have time for it. And you know, Mike, I understand why Mike isn't helping. Mike, you know, from the documentary, from reading reports, from listening to things, you know, Mike was already very envious of Brandon's lifestyle. We don't know if it's because, Brandon was beginning to come out and Mike didn't have the nerve to come out. But Mike was already, I guess, envious, maybe jealous of Brandon's lifestyle. I don't understand why the sister hasn't reached out to help more. I mean, especially, everybody's older now, and she's no longer, a kid in college. I'm sure she's a mother and maybe someone's wife, and has a career and everything else. Where everybody's older now. Why haven't you tried to help?
Right. And here's the big thing. It's like there's this guy that didn't know Brandon and looked at the evidence and came up with the conclusion that Brandon was innocent. And then there were a bunch of people that looked at the evidence and then came up with the conclusion he was innocent. And there's this huge movement right now to try to get this guy out of prison because they feel like he's innocent. So at the very, very least, why not come back and say, you know what, maybe there's something to it. I understand when all of this was going on, the police were telling me that he was guilty and they had evidence and blah, blah, blah. But now, like you said, all these years later, there has been evidence come forward that shows that he's innocent. There has been information that's come forward to show that some of the evidence that was presented was not credible. So why not at least jump on board, come over and say, hey, yeah, let's take a look at this. And if he's really innocent, let's fight to get him out and take a look at all the evidence that we have. I'd be more than happy to have you come over and take a look at everything. And like I said, like we said before, come on the podcast, give us your view of things.
Yeah, like I've said it before too. I'll cook dinner. Come on over.
Maybe she's not coming because you didn't tell exactly what you're going to cook. What would you cook if Charla came over and got on the podcast?
Oh man, I cook these really amazing chicken breasts where I take those like French fried onions and crumble them up myself and make like a breading for them, and then I bake them, and then I coat the top with like a layer of like cream cheese and shredded cheese and some more little crumbles of those French fried onions to die for, man.
Is there a name? Is this just C. Derick Miller's chicken, or is this like
it's called Chad's Badass Chicken. That's what we call it.
See, that's what you're missing, Charla. If you come on the podcast, you too can taste Chad's badass chicken. I don't know what she's waiting for. I mean, I expect the phone to ring any minute.
Right, man. Hey, everything we make in this house, man, we do it from scratch. We don't use stuff out of a box. I'm just telling you. Come on the podcast. I will feed you.
All right.
So.
That's a good offer. All right. So did I answer Debbie's question? Are those the questions the first questions I would ask?
Okay. All right. Thank you again, Debbie, for keeping up with us every week. We appreciate your dedication.
We need lots more listeners like Debbie.
Right. And Debbie, maybe one day you too can have Chad's Badass Chicken.
Oh yeah. We should put that on. We should put that on the Patreon page. Just like if they donate at a certain level, then we'll give them Chad's Badass Chicken.
Chad's Badass Chicken.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Sure enough,
that's
man.
Awesome. That'll have to be an expensive level though. That'll be like the $100 a month or something.
Yeah, $100 level to get
Not
Chad's
anybody
Badass Chicken.
Not just anybody gets Chad's Badass Chicken.
And not to mention, it's all 100%. Every ingredient I use in the food I make in my home is all 100% gluten free.
Even better.
So every bit of it.
Nice.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
The last question of the episode.
Number 3.
This comes from Ellie in Birmingham, Alabama. It's a city.
Okay.
Okay, Ellie asks, you said the other friends were off on their times. What did they say happened that night when compared to Brandon's answers?
Well, this is kind of one of those things that makes it so frustrating is, and we say in the episode that the fact that Ranger Collins said that Brandon lied about where he was that night is a big deal because, he never lied about where he went. All of his friends confirmed where he went. All of his friends that they talked to confirmed that, yes, he met us at Denny's. Yes, we went to Alex's house. Yes, we went to the club. So his alibi definitely confirmed where he was that night. The thing that was off was just the times. And the times ranged from, I can't really say specifically, but basically they ranged from, they met up with Brandon from about 9:30 until I think it was 10:45 or 11 was the last one. It's everybody that was questioned about his time frame that night. James Britt, Alex Ruley, which were the two friends that he met up with at Alex's house, and then Robert Martinez. Every single one of them was off on the time. And as we pointed out, Alex was even told by an attorney friend of his to go back and literally write down every single time that he was where, everything that they did. So just the fact that he was more than, I want to say he was 45 minutes to an hour off. And that's the thing that makes it so frustrating is if Ranger Collins would have stepped back a minute and looked and say, okay, Brandon says that he was here at this time, here at this time, and here at this time. Let's go talk to the friends. Let's go find out where they were. Let's say where they say they were. Let's look at the phone records. Let's do all this investigative stuff first before we make an arrest. I don't think Brandon would have ever been arrested because of the fact that everybody was off on the times. The phone records were showing that he was at certain places, that type of thing. So, that's the most frustrating thing about it is he didn't go back and do those investigative things before he made an arrest, because it says, and we'll get to this not next week, but the week after when we start talking about the arrest warrant. Ranger Collins started making out that arrest warrant as soon as Brandon left the interview room. And there was no good faith effort to talk to the alibis that he said he was going to talk to. And that to me is the number one most frustrating thing about this case. But we'll get into that when we get into the arrest warrant.
Yeah, we still got a lot of ground to cover, man. Lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I really hope that everybody sticks with us because the reason we're doing the podcast is because there is so much information in this case. There's no way that I would be able to explain everything in a 1.5 hour documentary. And that's the reason we're doing the podcast, is because I'm hoping that when we go out and we start promoting the documentary and promoting the case and getting the case out there in the public purview, that people will start researching it, find the podcast, and then they can go back and listen to all the episodes and get the answers to all the questions that they have that the documentary wasn't able to cover.
Well, man, I was doing that the other day. I was looking ahead at some of the upcoming episodes and thinking about all the documents that I read when I was doing research, and I'm just like, man, we it's a long road ahead. It really is. But yeah. I mean, that's more episodes for you guys. That's I mean, it's a whole lot more episodes of you guys. But we're not going to be covering the Brandon Woodruff trial forever. If I know we've had a couple of people in the past week reach out to us with ideas for season 2. Mm-hmm. So we're starting to look into those cases as well. So we'll get there. We'll all get there together.
Yep.
We'll all get there, and we'll all have Chad's badass chicken.
That's going to be that'll be we'll have to do that when we sit down and all the different producers discuss which episode we're going to cover in season 2. We'll have to come over to your house or whatever, and we'll all sit down, have some Chad's badass chicken, and come out with what's the thing that they do when they choose a new pope? They all get together and then
they burn something and like colored smoke comes
Right.
out of the chimney or
right. So we'll have to do that.
I watched the Tom Hanks movie once and it showed that. And it was Ewan McGregor was like a hopeful. He was a popeful. He was the hopeful pope.
The hopeful pope.
He was the popeful. Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of the American Justice Podcast Q&A, episode 8. We hope you've all listened to it before you watch this. If not, now would be the time to go back and listen to it. We're going to release episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, on Sunday.
Well, finally,
You're right.
to the current episode. Like,
you're right. Next, when we hit episode 10, I'm not going to know what to say. I'm just going to make up Star Wars names.
the Black Jedi.
Yeah, the Black Jedi, the Revenge of Jar Jar Binks.
Oh God.
Well,
boy, talk about a controversial subject. Let's start talking about Jar Jar Binks. Jeez.
Yeah. Ugh. Anyway, he was necessary. I have a whole rant about Jar Jar Binks. We'll save that for another episode as well. He was necessary. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to ask your questions.
Yes.
We'll be more than happy to answer them. You can ask questions through email, through the website, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Basically, if it's a social media format, you can ask us a question on there. The possibilities are pretty much endless. Some of our questions this week were through YouTube. The others were on Facebook. So you can still. Yeah, I forgot about the telephone. No one calls on the telephone anymore.
I know, right? Well, they can. How about they call on my cell phone? The number is 81. Oh wait, we don't have time for that. Oh, okay.
We don't have time for that.
Oh,
yeah, we don't have time for that, Scott. We don't have time for your cell phone number.
Sorry.
Maybe we'll give that to him next. We'll give that to him next week when I give him my Brooklyn Jew impression.
Oh, I don't know.
So,
we'll see.
I'm your co-host,
promises,
C. Derick Miller. What?
It's a no promises, but I'll think about it.
Yeah. We'll think about doing it.
I cannot confirm nor deny that I will give out my cell phone number next week, but there will be some thinking about it involved.
Also, you can go into a raffle to win a Scott Pogency swimsuit calendar. You can win an American Justice Podcast swimsuit calendar.
I thought we weren't going to tell. I thought that was our little secret, Chad.
Nope, cat's out of the bag, man. We can't put it back.
Oh no. All right.
I'm your co-host, C. Derick Miller. You can find out more about me at cderickmiller.com. I just re-released one of my old novels yesterday called A Taste of Home. If you like books written about Texas and you like werewolves, you put those two things together and there you go. So you can find that on Amazon. Who doesn't like Texas werewolves?
Are they like bigger in Texas? Bigger werewolves in
They
Texas?
are. Werewolves are bigger in Texas, definitely.
Oh my.
You can also listen to the Butterflies Make Me Angry podcast that I do every week, where we introduce you to an indie author. We read you the first chapter of their book and leave it up to you, the listener, to decide whether or not you would like to continue the story. So again, I am C. Derick Miller. On the other side of town over there is Mr. Scott Pogency. And we will see you guys next week for the video Q&A for episode 9.
Do you don't have the tagline?
Oh,
written
you know,
out there?
the tagline. The tagline.
We always got to say the
Oh my
tagline.
God. I am horrible with the tagline.
That's okay. I'll do it this time, and then we'll do it.
You do it. Because we can never sync up. When we say it, we can never sync up. So you just say it. The tagline will be your thing.
We'll do, or we could just do like rock, paper, scissors and see who gets to say the timeline.
I think you're good.
Oh, okay.
I think you're good.
All right. Well, until next time, remember, stay aware, stay strong, and get involved. See you next time.
Skippy.
The American Justice Podcast is owned and copyrighted by Atua Productions, LLC. Your host is Scott Pogensee, and your writer is C. Derick Miller. The theme music for the American Justice Podcast has been created and composed by Josh DeRosa. Scripted and recorded episodes are published every Sunday morning, with follow-up Q&A episodes released on Fridays. You can find the Q&A episodes on YouTube by searching for American Justice Podcast. Atua Productions aims for this to be an interactive podcast where you, the audience, has a great amount of influence on the content of our shows. You can interact with us in several ways. First, and most preferred, is you can leave us a voicemail. Our phone number is 972-942-0444. Be sure to leave your name and the city you're calling from, along with whether or not we can use your voice on the air. If Facebook is more your style, you can log on to our Facebook page at facebook.com/American Justice Podcast. Feel free to leave a comment, or you can message us on Messenger if you have a more pressing question or issue. If you would like to blog about the show, then you can log on to AmericanJusticePodcast.com and tell us what you think there. You can find many of the documents discussed in this episode there as well. If you are a tweeter, you can also voice your opinion on Twitter at @AJusticePodcast. If you would like to support the show, you can do so in a couple different ways. First, consider visiting our Patreon page at patreon.com/AJPodcast. We have different levels of support that include t-shirts, guest call-in spots, and early access to our podcast and YouTube shows. Next, you can like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get notifications of when we publish episodes. We would also very much appreciate it if you could give us a 5-star review. If you have any comments about the show, or more importantly, any tips on the case we're discussing, please call 972-942-0444 and leave us a message. After all, if the subject of our podcast is innocent, that means someone out there is guilty. American Justice Army? Let's find them.